Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar of Preparedness at Home. In this webinar, we're going to share best practices that you can take in your home to be better prepared before the next disaster hits. We are SDP. We're a national nonprofit that does disaster resiliency and recovery work. We were formed in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and since then we've rebuilt homes for more than 2,000 people who've been affected by natural disasters. Over the years, as we've interacted with our clients, we've asked them, what do you wish you would have known and what do you wish you would have done to have been better prepared? What would have helped you to be better prepared before this disaster affected your home? And we heard many of the same stories and many of the same best practices. And so that's what we've compiled here today to share with you. Actionable best practices that you can take in your home over the next several weeks to be better prepared as we move into the next hurricane and disaster season. And what that's going to look like is, first, we're going to discuss how to assess your risk and what information to use to do so appropriately. Once you have your risk defined, how to build out your emergency plan for those risks, how to protect important documents so that you can apply for available resources, getting the right insurance and other financial protections and considerations, and then how you can proactively protect your property to make it more resilient. We're going to cover a lot of information, but everything is in our preparedness resource guide, which you can download for free at scpprotects.org. That guide you can use with your household to go through each of these steps to create your comprehensive emergency plan. So the first step is understanding what to plan for and when to act when it comes to a natural disaster in your area. Most of the time when we say natural disasters, people's minds tend to go towards hurricanes and flooding. But really, all of these best practices can be applied to other major natural disasters, such as tornadoes and hurricanes, and wildfires as well. But they even can be applied to disasters that affect just your community or your home. Things like a house fire, a power outage, or even a home break-in. Really, any situation that forces you to step back from your day-to-day life, pull together your resources, and recover is something that you should consider preparing for as you go through this household emergency plan. We often hear from clients who've been affected by flood that they just never thought that they would have been affected by a flooding event. Either they weren't close to the ocean, they've never flooded before, they weren't in a floodplain, they just didn't think it would happen to them. But more and more, we're seeing flooding occur in places that has never happened, and we're seeing flooding much more often. Just as an example, after Hurricane Harvey in the Houston area, 80% of homes that flooded were outside of a 100-year floodplain. So those households that simply relied on that floodplain as to determine their risk of flooding were then forced to recover without the resources that the flood insurance would have provided. So really don't rely on flood maps. They provide a lot of great information, but they don't take into account changing weather patterns, changes in the landscape, and new developments in your area. And finally, stay connected to local resources. The one that I think is best to check often is your state and county emergency management agencies' websites. These resources or these websites will track and document events that have happened or that they're tracking in your area. It's likely if that your county emergency management agency is tracking an event, it is something that you should also prepare for in your home. Having local news, weather apps on your phone, and emergency apps on your phone will allow you to stay connected to notifications as events are heading your way as well. This will allow you to know when to implement the plan appropriately based on this information that you're receiving. Once you identify which risks as a household you are wanting to prepare for, the next step is to go through the process of pulling together your household emergency plan. What this looks like is having all of the supplies together, having your communication and information plan in place, and having both an evacuation and a shelter-in-place plan finalized for your household. The disaster supplies kit is pretty standard. You'll see the same list of items often when people talk about disaster supplies kits. But the important step to take is to make sure all of these are in one place and easily accessible. We often hear from people that they didn't think they needed to create a disaster supplies kit because they could just easily get to this product in their home quickly. But really, you maybe find yourself in a situation where you just don't have the time to pull everything together if you have to evacuate quickly or if a disaster comes unannounced. One thing I want to point out on here is having the right medications and medical items that are needed for your household. If you have somebody that has medical care or medical items that cannot be interrupted, think about the ways that you can ensure having those resources available for them. So if they require a medical device that needs power, how you can plan for that in the event of a power outage. And then for medications, think about talking to your provider to get additional refills so that you can have medications on hand in the event that you can't get to your doctor's office. As you're pulling together your communication plan, your evacuation, and your shelter-in-place plan, really hope that you reference our resource guide. We have templates with questions that you can go through with your household to make sure that every detail is covered. Some things to consider as you're going through this process is first, get a full understanding of all of the emergency plans that your family and household are a part of. You are likely a part of your employer, your schools, any organizations that you're members of. They all have emergency plans, and you're likely a part of those as well. So understand your responsibilities across all of those and make sure that there are no conflicts. If you're not expected to be in two places at once in the event a disaster is heading your way. Once you have your plan created, go through the plan with your family on a regular basis. Ensure that everyone knows their roles and responsibilities, and keep this plan updated as your circumstances change. Recently, you've probably had your kids out of school for quite a bit of time. If your emergency plan includes something about connecting with your children's school, make sure that that is all updated appropriately. Or if you get a new job, if you move houses, make sure everything's up to date. And finally, one last thing to consider is we often hear from clients that their emergency plan starts with everyone at home and them taking the first steps together. But consider the scenario where you may find yourself in a natural disaster that is very sudden, and you may not be all together at one time. So you may be at work, or your children may be at school or at a neighbor's house. And so also incorporate in your plan how you're going to safely have everybody get together so you can move forward with the other stages of your plan. Once your emergency plan is in place, the next step is to protect your important records. After a natural disaster, many resources become available from FEMA, your insurance, from nonprofits, and from your employer. But all of those resources require an application and require significant documentation. Having your documents ready to go means that you can access those resources without any delay after the disaster. Documents to think about are your personal identification documentation, your household information, financial and legal documentation, so things like your documentation around who you owe money to, who owes you money, and what you own outright, and keeping documentation for each of those. And then medical records will allow you to see a doctor if you are forced to evacuate, or in the event that your doctor is affected and is unable to see you to ensure continuation of your medical care. Once you have all of your documents organized, the easiest place to store them is by scanning them into the cloud. If you don't want to do that, if you want to keep the physical copies, another great option is a waterproof box, a fireproof chest in your home, or even mailing the copies to family or friends out of town who can securely keep them and provide quick access to you in the event you need them down the road. So having your documents in line, the next step is to have the right insurance and other protections and considerations for your finances so that you're financially in a position to recover quickly if you're affected by a disaster. The best available resource for your recovery is insurance. And insurance really changes drastically from policy to policy. And so what we've done is in our resource guide, we have listed a series of questions to bring to your insurance agent. These questions will allow you to fully understand what your policy covers, what your policy doesn't cover, and what risks you're assuming by not having some of that coverage, so you can make the decision to add on coverage or change the coverage included in your plan. One thing to note is that there are many perils that are commonly excluded from most homeowner plans. The most noticeable or notable are flood insurance and earthquake insurance. Those are both add-ons to a standard homeowner's insurance plan. So if those are events that you are preparing for, talk to your insurance agent about adding that coverage on. Before a next disaster, it's really important to understand how to file your insurance claim, what documents you need to use, what documentations you need to provide, and knowing that ahead of time will ensure that you can access your insurance funds as quickly as possible. I mentioned flood insurance. I just want to underscore this again. In the event that your home is affected by a flood, if you receive 1 inch of water, the average cost to rebuild is $27,000. If you do not have flood insurance, that will be out of your pocket. It's not covered by homeowners insurance, and it's not covered by renters insurance. So because of that, we really strongly encourage you to look into flood insurance for your household and take the steps to add on that coverage. Many people are surprised to hear that the average flood insurance policy cost is just $3 a day. It works out to about $800 a year. And if you're a renter and your landlord has flood insurance, it only covers their structure. It does not cover your belongings in the home. So adding flood insurance to your renter's insurance policy is the only way to ensure that you'll be able to replace any contents that are lost by flood loss or damage. Renter's insurance with flood, or adding flood insurance to your renter's insurance is about $200 a year, less than $1 a day, and definitely worth the investment. If you do have flood insurance, earthquake insurance, auto, homeowners, and you find yourself in a situation where you have to evacuate or activate all of your insurance policies, you will be responsible for all of those deductibles. So while you're talking to your insurance agent, make sure you understand what that total cost is and save for that amount so that you can access those insurance benefits if they're ever needed. Many people plan to rely on FEMA, but FEMA does not cover your insurance deductibles. It is an ineligible expense for your FEMA grant, and so the only way is really to have that money out of pocket. The best way to maximize your insurance payout is to have a comprehensive home inventory. When you file your insurance claim, you have to provide proof of everything that you had that was lost or damaged. The easiest way to do that is to have a video of your home. You can do this tonight. Walk through your home with your camera on, open drawers, open cabinets, open closets, zoom in on your electronics make and model, and then you have that video documentation of everything that you own that you may need to have replaced after a disaster. There are also great apps that you can download for free that will guide you through the home inventory process. Both are great. Just having a home inventory is really important to be able to access all of the funding that you need to replace your items. We often hear from many of our clients that they did not have flood insurance, or they did not have take additional precautions because they assumed that FEMA was going to come in and help them after the disaster. And while FEMA is a great resource for natural disaster survivors and communities, the goal of FEMA is to bring those individuals to a safe, sanitary, and secure condition, which does not mean their pre-disaster condition. So often there are gaps in your recovery if you rely solely on the funds available through FEMA. Just as a snapshot for an example, in Texas after Hurricane Harvey, the average FEMA payout was $7,300, and the average National Flood Insurance Program payout was $41,000, just under $41,000. So for those individuals that relied on FEMA alone, they have a gap of $33,000 in funding that they missed out on that is probably very critical for their ability to recover. So once you have your financials in line, the next step is to protect your property, ensure that your property is prepared, the structure of your property is prepared and resilient for the potential risks in your area. So what that looks like is having regular inspections and maintenance performed so that there are no lingering minor issues that could develop. Secure your home for emergencies when one is heading your way to prevent additional damage, and then take proactive steps to make your home more resilient. So for regular inspections and maintenance, this can be really simple. Things like a low-hanging branch that may look a little suspicious now, but becomes a serious threat in the event of a windstorm. Or things like blocked drains, culverts, gutters, that if they're cleared ahead of time can help reduce flooding on your property. If you're a renter, talk to your landlord about who is responsible if you see these situations so that they can be addressed and they don't cause any additional damage to your property in the event of a natural disaster. If a disaster is heading your way, there are many steps that you can take to proactively protect your property. Things like moving anything that could be blown into your house, or putting flood barriers or sandbags in place, sealing cracks and openings. One important thing to note on these is any proactive steps that have some costs are reimbursable up to $1,000 by your flood insurance policy. So whether or not you're successful in preventing flooding in your home, save those receipts so that you can be reimbursed after the fact. Two things to point out on securing your property as well is you'll often hear from your local emergency management agency to disconnect your electrical appliances or shut off utilities in the immediate hours or minutes before a disaster. So learning how to do that at that time is the worst possible time to learn how to disconnect your electrical appliances and utilities. So take the time now to research and fully understand how to safely and quickly take those steps so that you can do so without adding any additional risk to your home when it's needed. And finally, any property improvements that you can make to make your home more resilient will just help to protect your home against that disaster, reduce the impact on your home. So not saying that everybody has to go out and invest $100,000 in their home today, but if you are looking to remodel, to renovate, or if you are looking to purchase a new home, think about different things that you can do for your roof, your windows, your doors, and your electrical systems to make your property more resilient. And one last note for you all is just want to share with you, just put a bug in your ear, that after natural disasters, unfortunately, the prevalence of contractor fraud is very high. Unfortunately, many people take advantage of disaster survivors and that insurance check that they get after an event. So if you ever find yourself after disaster looking to procure a contractor, don't skip any steps. Go through the normal procurement process that you normally would. Get bids from 3 people, check references, check licenses, IDs, insurance, and only hire someone that really checks all of those boxes. Several of our clients over the years have been victims of contractor fraud, where they received enough funds for their own recovery, but then were not able to recover on their own because the contractor that they hired took the funding without completing the project. And finally, if you do find yourself in a situation where you're affected by flood, you will most likely have to have mold remediation in your home. You will find contractors offering mold remediation services for upwards of $25,000. This is something that you can do in your home with about 3 able-bodied volunteers for $800 in supplies. So just want to let you know that before you spend your recovery funds on mold remediation, see if that's something that you can do on your own. Reach out to volunteer groups for help to save those recovery funds so that they can be applied to bigger issues down the road. On our website, you'll find free guides on how to properly mold remediate, as well as the correct supplies to do so safely. And I just want to thank you all for your time today. We love sharing these best practices. We hope that they can be useful for you as you prepare your home and as we move into the next disaster season. So if you listen to this presentation and you have already done all of these things that we discussed, please share this information with your neighbors, your family, and your friends so that we as a community can be better prepared as we move forward. Again, thank you so much. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Look forward to talking to you all soon.